achieve out of a short list of people that are in this group. We know we need, say, 8, 10, 7 or 8 through in this group. That's how we would do it. So it would be top to bottom and very, very simple, as you can see. So that's psychometric testing for cognitive abilities. Are there any questions? Because I know this raises a few questions normally. Any questions about that? No? Feel free to turn your microphone on if you would like to, because I know this does raise some, because this is kind of where people get anxious about a process commonly.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So what about the ones in the yellow? So they'll be started, or?
It's a bit like a traffic light system, if you imagine that. So again, this is only a working example. I don't want to get too bogged down in, oh, hang on, if I score 48, what does that mean for me? It's more about in this comparative pool, is we would call them sort of backups. So if we knew that we needed more candidates through in that list, we might go as low as the orange as well. So it's a bit like green, we absolutely will put through to next stage. The orange maybe, depending on if we need the numbers. Red is a bit more like a red flag, like those numbers are reasonably low. So not only are they lower in the scale of what you're seeing on the page, but there would be some hesitation in progressing, because it tells us that, if you're scoring 4th percentile on abstract reasoning, that means on a bell curve of 1 to 100, you sit at 4, which is quite low. So while that wouldn't necessarily mean immediate rejection in a recruitment process, it definitely would be a red flag, for an employer. So, but as you can see, in this example, you wouldn't even get to that level of needing to progress them. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay, good. Good. Okay. So we're going to go to video interviews, and please do ask a question if you've got one. What we're talking about here, and I'm just aware of time, so we don't have lots of time left, but I wanted just to zip through this for you. I wanted to show you the difference between what's a recorded video interview or screening interview and what's more of a Zoom or Skype formal interview, but in an online platform. So I'm sure some of you have come across providers like Veepool or Sonru or Alchemy, or these are the types of companies that offer employers a video-based platform. So if you haven't done one of these before, the idea of a recorded interview is a one-way camera, microphone, questions come up on screen, and you deliver your audio-visual response into the computer, into your system. And for an employer to review later. The difference with what's on the right-hand side is more a final stage interview, which would be a traditional interview, but just happens to be in a Zoom or Skype format, that's all. So if you hear the term video interview, commonly it refers to what's on the left-hand side here and not on the right, which is much more platform-driven, sitting in your room like you're doing at the moment, but everything comes up on screen and not in person. So you're recording based on text. Okay. Again, it's probably a whole session on its own, but just to give you a flavour of what's in there is important. That's the number of employers in Australia in this same graduate employer survey that are using these kind of tools. So in a video interview world, and this number's only grown in the last year with COVID, etc. as well. So that's important to know. It's a real thing, and it's just getting bigger as well. Video screening and interviewing. This is more just a process and more just for background. You sent a link, you log in, you see questions come up one by one with the timer counting down, and you deliver your response. So it's a bit like what used to be phone screening or phone interview, when a recruiter calls you, you're at the beach or in a shopping centre and asks you a few questions. That's what this replaces, is more this video process. So really super simple for an employer to use and much easier for them to resource. So if you haven't seen it, a lot of the universities that you're involved with, I know, have video interviewing software that you can practice with. So I'll definitely hit up your careers services at your relevant universities, because most of them have an area you can practice these as well. So definitely to get your head across those. Virtual assessment centres, we may or may not know what they are, but just to cover them really quickly, these are kind of the small groups, larger groups, individual team act. So as you remember in that shortlisting funnel, this becomes kind of almost the final stage. And again, some of you might have been to an assessment centre, but you're sitting at, if it's on location, you're sitting at tables of 5 or 6, you're working together to achieve an outcome or a goal. So depending on the size of group, etc. How does, and this is where COVID has really changed things, how does that work in a COVID world? Well, we've seen a lot of employers go to a virtual model. So what that is exactly like what we're doing today. And if we've got time, which we may run out of, where we break you out into rooms, that is the same process that employers are using for their assessment centres currently. So where you can't be on location is doing things in a Zoom or WebEx type model to get you to interact. The difference being you're going to have an assessor that would be in your virtual room that would be watching and listening and measuring you. So really just important, there's some key tips there. Stay engaged, watch all your non-verbal sort of body language. It's not a conference call, so you need to be sort of switched on and ready to do things. But effectively, what I'd call virtual assessment centre is very, very similar in process to a real one, but it's just on a platform like this. So, hey, I'm going to break into groups of 4 or 5 and we're going to go and do this or that. It's exactly like that, in person and also in a Zoom format like this. Are there any questions about assessment centres or comments before we move on? No, is this hitting the mark for you? I realise we're sort of breezing through some things, but today was really about a snapshot to give you some insights. So, all good? Okay, so how do we see that COVID has changed things? Seeing a lot more digital online promotion. In other words, less organisations are going on campus for obvious reasons or doing career expos, for example. A lot more digital online promotion of their graduate and internship programs. More use of online tools. We just talked about a few of those. We've seen more prevalence in these tools because, as with some of you, you could be sitting at home in India or in China or anywhere and actually be assessed and still be considered. Whereas if you need to be in person, then that's very location specific. As we just talked about, things like assessment centres and interviews being adapted to an online model is another thing, as is working from home. So all very, things have definitely been changed up a lot in these areas in the last 12 months for sure. But look, companies are still recruiting, which is the great news. So there's still, confidence in the market. Numbers haven't dropped off that drastically with graduate programs and things. So that's the good news in Australia, I mean. So I don't think I'm going to break you out into rooms, but what I'd love you to do, you just have a look at this, right? So rather than break out, because I think we'll run out of time. I just want you to have a look at that scenario. What is it that you could be doing to increasing your chances? So this is to all the international students, based on what we've discussed, or what I've got some tips for you in a minute, but what do you think you can be doing to increase your chances of finding a job? Is there anything you can be doing? Just feel free to drop it into chat or speak up if you'd prefer to.
Countries start doing certifications, I believe.
You could be doing, so additional study, absolutely. That's definitely an option. I can see unpaid internships have come up. That's absolutely a solution as well. What I would suggest just to ensure with unpaid internships that they're accredited, they're for work integrated learning accredited programs, because you can, just I suppose be very aware of, make sure it's legitimate, that there's a real host company, etc., etc. There's structure around it. Online courses, absolutely. Anything else? Yes, love it. If it's Tarun, is that right? Absolutely, that's one of mine that I've got for you. Increase your engagement, increase your online presence, get networking more, absolutely is one of them. Anything else before I sort of show you a few of our hints and tips? Any other ideas? Involve more volunteer, absolutely. So here we go. This is about sort of more about how we bypass this eligibility kind of factor, and how do we kind of get more engaged with employers. So we call it be strategic. So someone just mentioned it, which is awesome. So get involved on LinkedIn, not just LinkedIn, but as an example, blog, comment, join a relevant group, get noticed. So basically put yourself out there in a professional way on social media, absolutely. I can see the comment about not everyone's on LinkedIn. I'd make it very clear that if you're not, LinkedIn's not the answer to everyone's problems, by the way. It is a tool, and it's a fairly well-known one, but look, whatever social networks or mediums or platforms you can use to kind of connect, establish, even if that's in person, that's critical. That's more likely how you're going to get a door opened. Events, doesn't need to be in person. Again, for those of you who are, in home country, find an online event that you can do that might be in Australia if that's where you're coming back to study, or ideally work. Is what industry events can you attend? How do you introduce yourself to someone? These events are full of hiring managers. How do we get in front of those and make ourselves valuable? Target companies. I know this sounds quite traditional and sort of old-fashioned, but approach directly. There's absolute merit, and people get great outcomes with direct approaches to companies. So don't be, however you do that, whether it's through a colleague or friend, whether it's through, a part-time job, whatever it is, target companies, approach them directly, see if you can speak to someone in that company. It makes a big difference. I'm passionate about your organisation. I love what you do. This is what I do. Is there any opportunity here? Those kind of discussions, usually, if you're persistent with it, can be really helpful. Approach a casual employer. Some of you, again, if you're back in home country, it may not be as relevant, but if you're working for, the example I commonly use, if you're working as a swimming teacher at a swimming pool, teaching little kids how to swim, and you're an IT undergraduate or even postgraduate, they commonly would have some kind of IT division or department. Why not ask, is there any experience I can get in this organisation? I already know you, I already work here. You can see where that would end up potentially. So, think about all these factors. And we are in a later session with all of you with Study New South Wales. We're going to be sharing, how to get this kind of work experience and sort of delve a bit deeper into this. Also an internship, which I know got mentioned, so whether that's paid or unpaid, can really bypass the normal graduate recruitment process as well. So really important that we know that. Hopefully there's some ideas, there'll be more, but I think these are the ones we know can really make a difference as well. I just wanted to kind of finish off with, what does an intern to graduate timeline look like? In other words, I'm not saying that everyone's going to get an internship and this is exactly the path, but I just more want you to think about dates. So if you are, let's say, currently a penultimate year student, as an example, so your second to final year being penultimate, companies are commonly looking for interns from July, roughly July, even earlier, it can be currently actually, but commonly July to September for the coming Christmas holidays, for the end of the year. So if you're a penultimate, you need to be thinking about that now, starting to plan for who am I going to apply to, where am I going to apply and why. Then you ideally do a placement at the end of the year if you are lucky enough to get one. And this is an example. The company would then review your performance, and ideally you become so valuable to that organization, they're offering you a graduate role for the following year. So as you can see, there's this real timeline, and I suppose my biggest, the biggest trap to fall into as a graduate or undergrad or you know, doing a postgrad, whatever level you're at, is coming to the end of that and then say, okay, now I'm ready to get a job. It's just too late by then. So think before, think now, start planning now, no matter where you're at, and start filling that pipeline now. So these are some final comments, and happy to take a question or two. We are right on time. I'm just happy to take a question or two if there is one. Was that helpful, everybody?
Yes, sir. It was indeed very helpful right from beginning to end, because I don't think I would have gotten these insights elsewhere.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks.
I had a question at this point
Yep.
of time.
Sure.
So, you mentioned that certain qualities that the employers are looking for include self-awareness, EI, EQ, and collaborative nature and those kinds of things. So,
Yeah.
when we are writing stuff like a resume or a cover letter, how do we really prove to the employer that we have these qualities? Because you see, it is pretty easy to talk highly about oneself, but then that's not the most credible thing either.
Yeah, that's sort of what I'm saying, is those things would be assessed through those different stages. So, you know, a psychometric assessment is designed to capture and measure your EQ, IQ, or, you know, cognitive abilities. In your application, in an interview, in an assessment center, more about your communication and teamwork and, you know, those other elements that are important. So I suppose what we're talking about with the breadth of your skills and experience is to really draw on a range of different things that you've done is the important thing. So those things will organically come out for an employer because they've set up a process at each stage that will help them measure that. So it'll almost be like they're asking you for that information or testing you for it, to be able to, you know, measure and assess you.
All right. And one more thought I had is, most of the resumes today, they involve having the link of your LinkedIn profile as well. And on that note, what do you think of us getting employer recommendations from on our LinkedIn?
I think it's really helpful if you've got a LinkedIn profile. Look, your LinkedIn profile won't necessarily secure you a job on its own. So don't think that's the magic bullet for all of this. But absolutely, those things help. Would your LinkedIn profile be assessed by every employer? No. No, it's more about these stages of application would be more, but they might review it, they might look at it just more to get more of an insight into you. But look, I wouldn't focus on that as being the, you know, the winner or the key area. So and apologies everyone, we do have to, so they're great questions by the way, and thank you. I think we do have to wrap up. So I'm hoping that you enjoyed today. Hoping you got a few things out. I really encourage you to use some of these things and create your own action plan for yourself. But just wanted to say thank you and really encourage you to attend all these events coming up for Study New South Wales. So they're great. And I'll finish on with that slide on the screen. So there's a whole bunch of ways you can stay connected and connected with not just this program, but Study New South Wales more broadly. So thank you and look forward to seeing you again. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much. It was truly very insightful.
Okay, thank you. Thanks everybody.